to be able to share some of my experience and perspective on the different, career opportunities after higher education in the US. I've outlined my talk to include a few components that would, I hope, help enable the audience today who are planning to pursue US career options to make a well-informed and educated decision. Initially, I'll just run through an overview of my personal career path, followed by an overview of why the knowledge of being able to impact people's life is so crucial. I would also use this opportunity to elaborate on the benefits and the rationale for pursuing a higher degree in the US for a better career. I know several of you are in the PharmD program and probably are not really thinking about, do I need another degree to add on to my kind of repertoire of degrees? So I'll just give you some insights on why it might be a good idea to add on a degree to your PharmD profession, and then followed by a deep dive into the different career types and pathways. And finally, I'll have a few slides to just kind of give you some takeaway thoughts, something to think about, churn about, and kind of use that to consider your career options. So before I really go into the career options within the US for the pharmacy professionals, I just wanted to briefly run through my career trajectory. And I think this would kind of put into perspective and help you in understanding how you could plan your career and how you could kind of end up in the position or the job that you would like to see yourself in. And so, as was mentioned earlier, I joined the Bachelor's in Pharmacy degree in the College of Pharmaceutical Science in Trivandrum in 1999 and had no idea what I was supposed to be doing, right? I mean, joined the Bachelor's of Pharmacy degree. And I think probably during my second or third year of my pharmacy degree is when I really kind of thought about, well, we need to plan ahead, a future. So my inclination at that point was to really come to the United States for a higher education. So after I graduated in 2003, I came to the US in Jan of 2005 to pursue my Ph.D. degree in pharmacology with a specialization in neuroscience. And by the time I graduated, I had over 9 research authored publications, all first author publications. And this really enabled me to kind of go into a postdoctoral training after my PhD. I did one postdoc and I followed it up with another short postdoc. And the objective of that kind of a small transition from the academic PhD program to a postdoc program was to kind of enable me to decide the pathway that I could kind of move into. I was more inclining at that point to go into an academic teaching position with research involved in my position. So one thing I would suggest very early on is to start planning and to start thinking what could be some of the opportunities that you should be thinking about as you move into the next phase of your career. And I would say that, right after my postdoc, I got into the academic setting where I was doing research, had my own lab, was doing my research, teaching undergraduate medical students, teaching undergraduate physician assistants. And this went on for a couple of years. So as part of my research in this university, I was also involved with kind of directing the genomic score, kind of working with the genomic score, helping some of the research questions that we had in our department. And once that, I was transitioning into there, I felt the need to kind of move on from an academic position. And I'll explain that reason in the upcoming slides, because that would kind of give you a perspective that you're not bound to one profession at any point in your career. There's always opportunities. There's always hope to move from one career path to another. It's just you have to find that bridging kind of either a program, whether it be a degree, whether it be some sort of a bridging a program that would help you make that move from whatever you are in right now. So, for example, being in a PharmD profession, you might thinking, well, I might end up being a pharmacist all my life. Great, that's a great opportunity. Absolutely. If you're interested, inclined in being in a PharmD profession, working as a pharmacist in a hospital pharmacy, community pharmacy, whatever you're thinking of, that's a great option. But don't be restricted with thoughts about just being in a pharmacy profession. You could kind of evolve from there. You could take an MBA. You could have different career paths that you could use to kind of, move into. And I wanted to kind of show the slide here because my normal path, or probably pretty much everyone who has a pharmacy background, might either be thinking about being a pharmacist or kind of being, taking an advanced degree and then settling in academic research. Great options. But again, I kind of moved away from that, from being an assistant professor in a university, tried to move into a scientific advising position within the largest nonprofit organization within the US after the National Institute of Health for cardiovascular research. So I was very glad to be kind of called in for accepting this position. I went into the American Heart Association. I'm still with there. But my role has slightly kind of evolved from being the scientific advisor to being the scientific lead, and also directing all the guidelines that are coming out from the American Heart Association. And I would just kind of go back into saying that one of the things that probably I miss at this point of my career is the publication that I used to have very early on during my research and in my academic life. So at that point when I was kind of leaving the academics, I had over 20 publications and several invited presentations. That invited presentation still continues to evolve as part of my dissemination efforts. Being on editorial boards, I'm still part of several editorial boards, but the publication is one side of it that you might have to kind of think about leaving as part of moving into a different career pathway. So I just wanted to kind of put some statistics and then moving forward, provide a rationale of why these are important. So, within the US, the heart disease and stroke is the #1 and the #5 leading cause of death in the United States. And on average, you see that someone in the US has a stroke or a heart attack every 40 seconds. And every 3 minutes and 30 seconds, someone dies from a heart attack or a stroke. Now, if you combine that with some of the brain diseases like Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, which are very closely associated to heart health, it's making a big splash within the US that all these brain diseases are part of the heart health component. So they are affected by everyday actions and rank among the nation's leading causes of death. So if you include these numbers, the impacted life because of these debilitating diseases are huge, from heart disease, stroke, and other neurological diseases. Now, well, you would think, well, this is in US. Though I plan to have a career in the US, it's still not applicable in any way to me right now. I'm right now in India. So why is this being provided to me? Well, let me put this here. Heart disease and stroke are the leading cause of death in India and responsible for 25% of all deaths in India. So we all know several of these lives can be saved, right? So imagine a person having a cardiac arrest at home, which is mostly the case within India. But only 2% of the people in India know how to provide these resuscitation measures to save a life. So even more astonishing is the fact that there are over 130,000 roadside accidents, accidental deaths that happens, and only about 20% of the victims get any sort of emergency care. Now, being part of the American Heart Association, we are really building a life of a nation of lifesavers, not just in the US, but across the globe, including India. Now, how is the organization that I'm involved with being able to positively impact this crisis? Now, over since 2018, we have had created a reduction of around 30% in deaths from stroke. We have reduced disease from deaths from heart disease by around 15%. We have invested $4.8 billion since 1949, more than any other nonprofit organization except the federal government. And then, as you can see, the training that goes into the cardiopulmonary resuscitation efforts, the quality initiatives that we have that would benefit millions and millions of people. So the reason I wanted to share these couple of slides is to help you understand that make your career goals and your ambitions big. Think big. You are going to be the healthcare professionals today that are going to contribute to the betterment of humanity, person by person. But what if you were able to impact more people at a time, maybe even thousands at a time, either directly, indirectly, or discreetly? So some of these career options that I plan to discuss today are similar to how we make an impact at the American Heart Association. So before I move into that, I would like to share some of the reasons to why additional degrees after your PharmD might be useful. Now, having more than one degree allow the pharmacy students to diversify their training and pursue certain career paths more easily than that what they could have achieved with a PharmD degree alone. So, obtaining a PharmD degree or obtaining a PharmD degree and combining that with a master's degree or a PhD in like a hard science, for example, pharmaceutics, pharmacology, medicinal chemistry, can really help you start a career in a pharmaceutical industry or a nonprofit sector much more smoother. So, ultimately, you should think about dual degree programs. So dual degree programs give candidates more options and broader skill sets to, set themselves apart from their colleagues. So you are going to, into a pool of job seekers who might have the same skill set as you. So the way you have to set yourself apart from your colleagues is to, one, define yourself by having a broader skill set. Now, there are graduate programs that are available in many areas for the pharmacists looking to possess both clinical and research-focused scientific knowledge. This qualifies graduates for various careers in the pharmaceutical industry, regulatory practices and clinical practices. And obtaining both degrees is a huge investment, I would say, because as you probably have invested a lot of money for your PharmD program. And the same would happen if you plan to come to the US and plan to have a master's or a PhD program. Granted that, there's no kind of supporting funding for you. If the supporting funding, the research funding, something is able to support your education, I think that would be a great. But in spite of all that, there is going to be some of these challenges of having to deal with the investment to be made for that education purpose. Now, what I would say that the flip side of it would be that the additional tools that are provided by having your combined degree, professional and graduate study program can really pay off in the form of having a career flexibility and having further advancements in your career as you kind of move into that path. And I really recommend student pharmacists to consider the potential benefits of of a PharmD, a master's or a PhD program, at least a master's program that can offer, as the need for the dynamic clinical scientist will likely grow with time. And even within the US, the concept of having a dual degree is becoming very widespread because they help develop and distinguish students in an increasingly competitive job market. Pharmacy students are, really entering into a competitive job market after graduation, as pretty much everywhere in the world. And I think, further to add on to it, the recession that we have been seeing in the past year, or in the past several decades, and the recent expansion of the pharmacy programs and the demand for pharmacists struggling to keep up with the number of pharmacists seeking employment. And I think this really helps in providing that perspective that adding on to your PharmD degree, either with a master's or a PhD degree, is going to make you more competitive in the job market. Now, I just kind of put in a very short slide thinking about some of the steps that you would have to take as part of your application for a master's or a PhD program. And I've used this slide in a couple of places, but I think it's somewhat important for those who do plan to kind of go into a further education into the US. So applying for the US education is a task that, it would take time and concentration, as each application is very different and it involves several steps. The first thing that I would advise you to do if you do plan to come to the US for higher education is to take your test scores. Take your TOEFL, take your GRE. I'm pretty sure most of you might be familiar in some format what these tests are, but these are basically standardized tests to kind of, either measure your English language ability for non-native speakers to kind of enroll in English-speaking universities. And also the GRE is more of your measurement of your verbal reasoning, your quantitative reasoning, and your critical and analytical writing skills. And once you have those test scores, other things that you would need to consider is your transcripts from your university. So, how have your grades been through your years of education? This is important as you kind of send in your application. You would also need a statement of purpose, which is basically a personal essay detailing out why are you interested in pursuing this program. And it, you probably need your supporting statement of purpose or this letter to be as strong as possible, providing a very valid reason for your interest in pursuing higher education within the US. And you would also want to have several letters of recommendation from the faculty that you are involved with, that who are involved with your educational programs, or even from non-faculty who might be part of the industry, who you might be knowing pretty well as part of your some sort of training. So all these would be really important in kind of creating your application as you think about applying to the places within the US. Now, the career types to pursue after your higher education, again, it's broadly, I would say, into the 3 or 4 pools. One is to conduct research and teaching, as I kind of described a bit earlier. This would be kind of direct involvement with the academic research or industry research. And in academics, you might have to do some sort of teaching as part of your academic appointment. And there are career types where it is science-related non-research activities. So you would be working in a science-related job that would not probably involve research activity, but would be more of things that are non-academic, non-bench work activities, which I'll kind of detail out a bit later. And then finally, there are completely non-science positions that are unrelated to science education. And then finally, if further training where, if you still feel that there is a gap that you are thinking about, you could take it to the next level of education that would kind of serve that purpose. A few career types for PharmD, especially for this group, I think, if you still plan to not go for an additional degree, but, pretty much want to be in the, in the pharmacist kind of that role, I think there are many clinics that serve diverse population within the US as part of the clinical pharmacy practice. And pharmacists are considered to be very integral members of the healthcare team whose the contributions, optimize cost-effective patient care. And I use cost-effective here because in the US, the system of healthcare is very different than what we, see in India. So the clinical pharmacy exists in a number of settings in the US, including the hospitals. You see them in the nursing homes and then other medical centers. So, the work would involve a lot of partnership with the physicians, the pharmacists, and the pharmacists would generally, kind of assume an increasing responsibility, I would say, for medication therapy management. So, for example, patients with chronic disease such as diabetes, asthma, or high blood pressure, and then kind of help those patients achieve the optimal outcomes through the use of appropriate medication, diet, and lifestyle choices. Now, you also have the community pharmacy that serve on the front lines of the healthcare. So in addition to dispensing medications and monitoring the patient for kind of any drug interaction or adverse effects, pharmacists also provide important counseling services, such as the proper selection of over-the-counter medications, and then also maybe referrals to other healthcare providers. Now, in addition to having that role in the community pharmacy, PharmD could have some impact in being involved with the government agencies, so local, state, and federal government agencies such as the NIH, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, the Veterans Affairs, and the Armed Forces. They require expertise from skilled pharmacists. So many graduates, I see them work in hospitals and clinics within these agencies. And then finally, the pharmaceutical industry. As we all know, the modern drug therapy is very sophisticated, and the pharmaceutical industry really requires these technically proficient sales and marketing personnel. The pharmaceutical research, in addition, and the development, they provide numerous opportunities for the pharmaceutical scientists, including the drug synthesis, isolation, packaging, quality control, all the stuff. So because of the expertise in drug therapy and the knowledge that you have in the healthcare delivery system, the PharmD graduates here are being actively recruited by some of the major pharmaceutical companies. I'll just share another quick example. I recently had interviewed one of the PharmD pharmacist. He was a community pharmacist working in another state, and he had applied to a position that we had within the American Heart Association. And not that he disliked his profession, but he had been working as a community pharmacist for over 10, 12 years now, and he was getting a bit kind of tied to the current role that he was having, and wanted to kind of make that shift into something different that would be kind of more impactful for the population. So those are again opportunities. Applying for non-profit sectors. Within the U.S. So the career categories, I would say, the pharmacy professionals are commonly hired in the area of academics. If you're having a dual degree, academics is one place, which would include universities, colleges, research institutions, for-profit companies, industry for-profit companies. That's one place that you would be called in for. Government and nonprofit, as I mentioned earlier, they also hire a lot of pharmacy graduates. And if you have, an additional master's or a PhD, it kind of fits in more when you are probably being hired for a science policy or a government relations, communication, education, publication, those kind of, or even executive positions. So it's, there's several opportunities within the government or nonprofit sector as well. And then in the executive positions, I've seen that there are several clinical research professionals that serve the members through their leadership, where you would need a very good oral or a written skill, communication skill, and then scientific expertise to talk to some of the funders that are key for sustaining the membership of the organization. And also many societies, including the American Heart Association, they manage our own scientific journals. And we do kind of hire in Ph.D. and PharmD trained professionals as editors because of the research clinical expertise that you bring into the job. And usually, academics is one place where most of the trained higher degree individuals would go, first think about joining, either through a postdoctoral training for kind of, that additional bridging experience, and then later on to the different levels of academic level positions. And then, if you're really interested only in teaching, but not as such as in bench or clinical research, you could be involved with just teaching positions within the organization. And then the academic and research administration is something that's probably overlooked by many people. They don't know that these opportunities exist, and these jobs kind of provide that operational management and support to the research and the academic academic community. So they basically kind of bridge a link between research activities that happens and then the research outcome. So ensuring that all the activities that happen from the research to the outcome are following the best practices. So some of these are listed below. It's again not a very comprehensive list. In the interest of just having a few bulleted out there, I included some that would be involved as grants program officers, institutional animal care and use committee coordinator, administrator of IRBs or the internal review boards. Industry-based position, that's something that people are really, seeking after their training. Could range from this, the industry-based positions could range from being involved with bench side research to non-bench side positions, such as being part of the scientific technical support, scientific marketing, or as the medical and science liaison. Many PharmDs and PhDs many PharmDs who have either an additional degree or many PhDs who work as scientists, they work kind of in the discovery phase, in the preclinical, in the clinical research, in the manufacturing, in the quality control, of the pharmaceutical and the biotech firms. And you also find a lot of opportunities within the medical science liaison sector. I've seen several openings within the pharmaceutical sector and the medical device companies, and they're really looking for that clinical expertise that you all have as part of your training. So they're either looking at that clinical expertise. They're also looking at if you have any research experience. That research experience really adds on to help you get into that position. And again, I kind of bring this up during my discussions. The people's misconception about what a medical science liaison position is. They mostly think of it as a sales position, which is not the case. The medical information scientists, as I would call them, provide that scientific education to physicians, educate the pharmaceutical sales force, and then work with the clinical development teams to on the study protocol and the design and the submission. And then you have opportunities where you can transition into career paths that are outside of this industry or this academic position that I talked about. So for example, the science review officer, they work in collaboration with the scientific community to ensure that the scientific review group or the study section identifies the most meritorious science for funding by the institutions in the centers. And then, you could even have a role in the science policy where you'd be working with the federal and state governments in development of policies. But all this to also say that, if you plan to be working in a science policy, there might be some kind of additional experience that you would need to gather after your PharmD program that would align with the position that you are looking for. And then the next one would be on science writing and communication. Again, the medical communication specialist, their responsibilities would include writing and editing materials that healthcare organizations would use to communicate with patients, with clients, and with medical professionals. So what you'll be involved with, you'll be able to, based on the clinical understanding that you have, you'll be able to organize, you'll be able to edit, and then present that information in a manner that's appropriate for the target audience. So if you're targeting a clinical audience, the content that you would be providing input to would be very much targeted to the healthcare professionals. Now, if you're targeting the patient population, you'll have to kind of tone down a bit on how you kind of write that information so that even the layperson would be able to understand what's written in the document. And then, usually all these positions require some sort of excellent written communication skills. So if that's something that's already in your repertoire of skills, use that skill of your, that you have in the written communication space, that you have, oral communication. So all these would be really helpful in that science communication portfolio of jobs. Now, the other part that would be involved with is the policy and the regulatory affairs, and this just basically builds on the foundational knowledge of the laws and the regulations and the good manufacturing practices that's mandated by the Federal Food and Drug Administration in the U.S. and its international counterparts. And they have very, 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 very important roles in the pharmaceutical industry, where they make sure that the products that are made by the company are compliant with the global standards. And they also help with expediting the drug development process by kind of analyzing the current market standards. So I think pretty much all are familiar with the COVID vaccine development, right? So FDA had a big role, CDC had a big role in kind of approving the trials that were done by the pharmaceutical companies, and then saying it's up for public use. Finally, if you're more interested as a healthcare professional to move into the clinical trial arena, so you have clinical trial positions within the industry, but you could also think about maybe moving into kind of a clinical trial manager position who would not only be managing, who would not only manage the clinical trial process from start to finish entirely, but to kind of formulate all the strategies that needs to go in to be implemented at various stages to make that clinical trial the most effective one. So your PharmD, your higher, other degrees would really come to use when you have to interpret and kind of discuss the clinical information that's received during the trial and document them. And the last one that I wanted to put here was for folks who are interested in kind of that business development piece of it, forging the strategic alliance. There are opportunities within all these sectors to go into the business development side of it. And I would say at this stage in every role, even if you are probably in an industry working as a researcher, working as a clinical trialist, there would be some sort of some input on the business development that you would have to provide. That's kind of an expectation across the board, across all organizations, across all institutions and industry. So, but if you're really strong in those business development piece of it, one thing you could do is, again, if you really want to be exclusively involved in those business development projects, think about trying to take in masters in business administration. There are several universities within the US who provide dual degrees for PharmD and MBA, but since you all have that clinical experience already, all you would have to do is to kind of take that additional master's in business administration degree that would kind of help help you to move into the business development side of the organization. And I've always found that having those kind of business degrees is also probably helpful within, especially the industries, to kind of move the ladder up really quickly. So you could be, so what you would have as as a distinction from others is you have your clinical, you have your research background, and in addition you have the business development. So it's like a great combination to have both, where you could really kind of climb up the ladder and then get into that the scientific officer, or the being the vice president of different organizations or companies, or even think about starting your own venture as an entrepreneur. I put this slide in just to kind of show you the impact of how producing a document or a guideline from the AHA has. So this was a stroke secondary prevention guideline that is targeted for people who have had a stroke but who needs to be prevented from another stroke. So we had published a guideline last year, and the guideline was published, and this is some of the recent data that we collected from that guideline launch. So guideline is just a piece of document, but see the impact that you can make if you're involved with it. So you could be involved as an author in that, that highly impactful guideline. And this really impacts the amount of patients that are being impacted, the amount of healthcare professionals that are being impacted, the amount of people that are reached through different social media platforms on the on this guideline. And then again, I would just like to highlight that US Pharmacist, which is kind of a source of all the pharmacy, they had a placement of this guideline on their website. So a lot of pharmacists would be kind of reaching out to this guideline, looking for information, trying to see what could be the drugs. For example, if you need to manage your blood pressure, or if you need to manage your lipids, would you need to take a statin? What kind of, what dose of statin should you take for preventing a second stroke? So these are all information that are widely used across all spectrum of the healthcare professionals. And final couple of slides, I just wanted to provide you, many of you might have seen this, and if you haven't, just go in at some point and search for Abraham Maslow. He is a psychologist. He was a psychologist who created this hierarchy of needs pyramid. And he explained some of the motivating forces by placing them within something, again, called the hierarchy of needs. And according to Maslow, we are motivated by what we need. And since the original, this is not the original hierarchy of needs created by Maslow. I mean, there are several revised versions over years that are used for different things. But this one version I thought would be quite relevant to you all to help you think about making that next move in your career. So you all are, I think, I would feel you're all set in the first two. So it goes from down bottom all the way up. So you all are probably set in your physiological and the safety needs, right? So you have access to whatever you need. You have great instructors within your institutions. You have whatever you need for your training. You are in a safe environment where you learn. So these are things that are already in place for you. Now, what you need to do, you need to build relationships with your peers, with your instructors. You might be having great relationship with your friends. But what you also need to do is to kind of create relationship with your mentors, with your professors, because that, their knowledge of how to provide and help you gain, better your life is very critical. And then having that sense of self-esteem, feeling confident. You always have to feel confident, have that value of self-esteem and being confident. That's going to take you to a higher level. And then finally, be responsible for whatever learning or whatever opportunities you are doing. Let not others decide what you need to do. It's your responsibility to create your career path. And with that, just one of my personal stories I would share here. So when I joined the American Heart Association, I was asked why I wanted to be joining this organization. And I had a very good reason. And this is what I said. I said, as a former research investigator, the trustworthiness and the quality of science that the organization has consistently provided over the years has really impacted both my career and my research, academic and the research. And now I'm very grateful to, kind of serve as the scientific lead for AHA, where, I could continue to pursue my passion of, ensuring that the scientific and the clinical research and the patient care is really being positively impacted at a much higher level by the high quality of science that's produced by this organization. And with that, I hope I've been able to instill some degree of information within you all, and I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have over the next several minutes of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the inspiring and wonderful talk and changing our insights, and also for sharing your experiences with us. I'm sure everyone present here have learned a great deal through your talk. If anybody has any queries to raise, please unmute and ask or drop them in the chat box. Sir will be delighted to clarify them for you.
And I do know, I mean, it might be a lot of information, and it would probably take a bit more time for you to all to kind of process and understand your needs and requirements and what your aspirations are for your next phase in life. So, feel free at any point to also kind of, Dr. Shaiju has probably my email address as well, but happy to share that if anyone has any kind of follow-up questions or discussions to kind of want to clarify on.
Nikita, someone has raised a questions in the message box, I think.
Yes, sir. I'll just.
Yeah.
Sir, somebody just asked if they can do residency program after PharmD in the US.
So I'm not sure about that answer, because I've haven't been kind of in the pharmacy profession per se within the US. I've never practiced as a pharmacist in the USA. It's mostly been kind of my trajectory has been quite different. But I do know that if you take some of those qualifying examinations, that you would have the opportunity to kind of work here as a pharmacist. But you might have to kind of check on the specific kind of those programs and that fellowships that are available after your PharmD within the US.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I myself have a question. Could you maybe brief about the NAPLEX examination in the US?
Well, again, that's something that at this point, I think you would probably have a lot of information within their website. I know their website has been revamped, and it's pretty informative on applying for that examination, the requirements for the examination, and then how, some of the tips for kind of clearing that examination after your as part of the PharmD equivalency position. So I would seriously encourage all of you to really kind of go into the official. I know there are several forums and misinformation being provided, but the first step for all of you as students would be to go into a really authentic, the proper website that would provide you with information. And then for added clarity questions, there's always going to be, for any of these, there's always going to be a support email that you can kind of reach out to. And most of the places here, I'm very sure they kind of respond to you in a very quick fashion. So that would be my advice, to kind of look into the authentic, the website for providing, who would provide this information, and then kind of reaching out either by phone or through email to get the right information. And then the additional resource I would also encourage is to identify and get support from individuals who have gone through this process, right? So someone from, who have done their PharmD in India, they've come to the US, or they've taken their NAPLEX. Talk to them, because they can provide the best information on the troubles that they've gone through for clearing that examination, or some of the tips that would help you in understanding how to better navigate that whole process.
Thank you so much, sir. I now request anybody from the participants to just provide a quick feedback on the session. Anybody?
Good evening. So I'd like to provide my feedback. Good evening, sir. So I'd like to first thank you so much for having this talk with us. I felt like your presentation was very wholesome, and it highlighted not only the various areas that I can delve into or pursue after PharmD, but you also spoke about the various skills that I need to develop to have a successful career as a pharmacist. So I'm very thankful for that. And I felt this entire presentation was very informative, and I truly appreciate you doing this for us, sir. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Ms. Nishana. And if you have any further kind of follow-up questions, happy to kind of address those. But I think it's very important, as you pointed out, it's not just your educational skill, but those soft skills that you bring in. Those are the ones that are transferable. If you have those good communication skills, if you have good writing skills, make it to your best use. How could you translate it to something that is, that helps you further in your career?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I now invite Ms. Gayatri from 6th year PharmD to render the vote of thanks.
A warm and graceful evening to our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Prashant Nedungadi, Director of AHA Stroke Guide of American Heart Association, the Management Committee of the Daleview College, dear students, dear teachers, and everyone gathered here. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make it possible. I, Gayatri Prabhukumar, on behalf of the Daleview College of Pharmacy and Research Center and the entire fraternity of the institution, extend my sincere thanks to the Almighty for making today's event a grand success. On behalf of my college, I extend my sincere gratitude to our chief guest, Dr. Prashant Nedungadi, Ph.D., Director of AHA Stroke Guidelines at American Heart Association, who spared time from his busy schedule to grace the occasion. Today, we have the opportunity to hear your thoughts on the career opportunities for PharmD and MPharm graduates in US, and this will surely prove helpful to us in our future endeavors. I thank Dr. Anita Toms, Assistant Professor, the Daleview College of Pharmacy and Research Center, for the welcome speech. Thank you, ma'am. I also thank Ms. Deena Das, CS, Chairman, the Daleview College of Pharmacy and Research Center. Thank you, ma'am. An event like this cannot happen overnight. It requires weeks of tenacious work, planning, and a bird's eye for the detail. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very proactive and dedicated staff. I am short of words for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. A special mention to our respected principal, Dr. P. Manoj Kumar sir, for being the catalyst that stimulated us to do our best. With deep sense of appreciation, we thank all the students for their untiring efforts for the successful conclusion of the program. Last but not the least, a big thank you to each one of you who made the event memorable. We thank you for your active participation throughout the session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gayatri. May I request all of you to raise from your seats for the national anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जाहे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you, Subala. I would like to conclude by quoting Sir Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Once again, thank you, everyone. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you. We are highly delighted. It was a splendid performance. We have no words to express the sincere thanks and appreciation for the wonderful section. Our students, Dr. Prashant, our students are simply awesome. Though they are very silent to respond to you, but we can see some of them definitely come over there in US, in your own territory, to compete with you. And we have a humble request. We need your constant support, and we would like to have a collaboration with us. We discussed with American Heart Foundation, and your personage and your mentorship is really mandate for us. And we are looking forward to see you soon. And another request is, whenever you happen to visit Kerala or India, kindly do let us know. Based on that, we will fix our graduation day, because we are really need your presence and your direct conversations. And thank you so much for your wonderful session. And I got a lot of feedback from the students. It was they were informing us it's a very informative section. Thank you so much, dear Dr. Prashant.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Shaiju, and it's very humbling to hear those nice words. I really appreciate those kind words, and most importantly, I'm very happy to hear what you said, that the students were well informed. I think that is the core intent. That was the core intent of this talk. To help, because when I was doing my bachelor's in pharmacy years back, I didn't have this opportunity of kind of listening in or talking to folks, outside of India to understand what the opportunities are. So I think, if I've been able in some way to kind of enlighten and provide that perspective, I am, I'm very thankful for it. and looking forward to working with you, Shaiju, more.
Great. It's great pleasure. And Dr. Seena is there, our vice principal, and Dr. Dr. Anita, and Anju is there, our all staff in charges. Because of them, it's happened. And Nikita is our, permanent comparer, and she's doing lots of things. And she will be settling very soon in Canada, just near to you. So thank you, Dr. Prashant. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity. Thank you again.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Stay blessed.
Bye-bye.
Once again,
Bye-bye.
thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Bye-bye. Good night, everyone. Good night, Seena.
Good night,
Yeah,
sir.
good night, sir.
Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Yeah.
Good night, sir.
So.